So some of the phrases that came out were like, yeah, the funniest thing was about all this is that I always work alone. Like, she ended up doing this big collaboration with the community, but characterized herself as a loner, um, in close proximity to lifelong love.
Mm.
Dogs first, and then the Bible, in my mind. Like, these are funny non sequiturs that contain so much more, when they're looked at in isolation. So there was Gordon writhing on the couch saying, I remember you saying, like, I've done something terrible. I don't know if you said that or if it's just my memory, but I remember you really doing a number on yourself about working with the voice in this way. And then I went into the back little room that was Gordon's little, like, sunroom studio, and I gave it a listen, and it just brought tears to my eyes because it was so universal.
Welcome. You are listening to Our Mindful Nature, formerly titled The Mindful Minute. I'm your host, Meryl Arnett. This podcast explores the deep connection between land and self through nature-based meditations and meditative experiences that invite us back into belonging to each other, to our ancestors, to the earth, and to all beings that make up this universe. If you would like to access these meditation practices as standalone audio files, please subscribe to my newsletter at merylarnett.com. It's free, and you'll receive a new mini meditation each week, along with behind-the-scenes content and bonus material for each podcast episode. All right, grab a cup of tea, pop in your headphones, and find a comfy seat. Let's settle in for today's episode. Perri and Gordon, hi.
Hello.
So happy to be
Hello.
with you guys.
Yeah, it's great to be here,
Yeah, it's
especially
really
on such a beautiful day for all of us, I'm guessing, because it's the right season.
it's a hot day for us. Is it hot where you are?
Oh, well, if the sea breeze stopped blowing and the birds stopped singing, maybe, but I don't think so.
It is hot and humid here. What about in Massachusetts?
Thunderstorms.
Thunderstorms. Oh, so we have a wide variety. All right.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. Can't wait to bust out the microphones. Yep.
So we are here to talk about busting out microphones, actually. We're here to talk about the time the two of you spent together at Canaveral National Seashore. I got to be with you for a brief minute down there. And even more specifically, the art that you created out of that experience. Hear me out is what I'm hoping to talk about today. And I thought maybe, Perri, maybe you want to kick us off just sharing a little bit about what you and Gordon were doing at Canaveral together.
What were we doing down at Canaveral? It was a wonderful opportunity that came our way through the Soundscape Field Station Artist Residency Program, which is jointly offered through the Atlantic Center for the Arts and Canaveral National Seashore. And those two organizations joined forces to create an opportunity for artists to investigate the soundscapes of Canaveral National Seashore. So we had the great good fortune to stay in the park with a key to the gate, like 24-hour access that only Gordon and I had to the park, for 5 weeks during February and March of 2024, earlier this year. And we were down there investigating various things. One interesting aspect was thinking about how soundscapes in Florida are changing relative to some comparable recordings that Gordon has from different areas of Florida. And I was down there interested in I was interested in the edges of the ecosystems down in Canaveral, and really curious about what is the soundscape here where this, like pristine lagoon shares the same breath with a rocket launch site. Like, what does that create sonically? And how does it influence our sense of place? So those are a couple of the ideas that we were investigating when we were down there. I'm sure Gordon has other ideas too, as well.
Yeah, I was very curious. First of all, I was real excited to have the opportunity to go there. It sort of came in the final hour that this opportunity was available for me. And I've been listening not only to the United States, but in various parts of the world, their soundscapes change over time, recording both in cities and in wilderness areas. And I had recorded in that part of Florida and similar environments up the east coast of the Southeast in Georgia as far back as the late 1980s. So I knew it was difficult then to get a pristine recording of nature. I'm always optimistic. I had hoped that I would find these pristine moments, at least at Canaveral. I was totally unprepared, though, for many things. The process of art, the deep honesty that I would have to go to, and sometimes, as Perri knows, would have me like trembling, curled up in a ball on the couch, going, "Oh my God, what have I done? What have I unleashed?" Um, and 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 to most of all, even with all that great sense of anticipation to find out this, listen for that, everything like that, um, I knew that I had to let go of all of it once I arrived there. And a thought that Perri shared with me when we were down in the Amazon together about a year earlier is that it's really not so much of what you're going to do with the place, but what the place is going to do to you, right? And even just saying that, the hair is rising up on my body. Yeah, yeah. Like, what are the consequences of listening, and and what is it like to go to the deep level of artistic creation? So, a real exciting opportunity. Yeah, and I just have to kick it off by saying, so I arrive. Okay. And I arrived with COVID that I didn't know. I caught it on the way.
No.
But it wound up, can I call it a blessing, Perri?
Absolutely, because it was our first collaboration. We both
Yeah.
got COVID.
Yeah. We both got COVID, but then we got our well-deserved isolation to go into this deep think tank because park workers and staff that would come up to fix a window or something like that. We'd have to go out there and in this kind of very hoarse and uh, joking voice. By the way, you should know we have COVID, and we got our privacy back, total privacy to do the deep dive into creation.
And you guys were staying, I mean, talk about private. You were staying at a house in the actual national park. You were not at an inn. You were not in the middle of the city. Is that right?
Yeah, Perri, you want to describe Doris Leeper? Is Doris Leeper's house, but describe Doris Leeper, who she was, what she left behind, and what the world might do with it from now.
Sure. Yeah, I'll start anyway, and we'll fill in around the edges. The Doris Doc Leeper is the founder of Canaveral National Seashore and its greatest champion. She is also the founder of the Atlantic Center for the Arts, which is nearby and near Smyrna Beach. And the interesting thing about Doris to me is that in her lifetime and in her legacy, she combined arts and the natural world and advocated for the arts and the natural world also in the same breath, a seamless connection between the two. And I always found that really inspiring. So the Soundscape Field Station Residency affords access to Doris Leeper's home, which she affectionately referred to as Capers Acres. And this home is her getaway from her bustling life in Florida and North Carolina, and where she escaped to make her own art and reconnect with nature. So we definitely went to, or I say I went to Canaveral to connect with the place, not necessarily the people, because it's very people-y down there. But her her persona was so embedded in our experience that it became absolutely like inseparable from any impression that I had, maybe that we had down there in residence.
Mm.
Yeah, it was a growing relationship. I went there just knowing that the house was, the Doris Leeper house, didn't know who she was. And as we spent time, different from even when you go for a week at one place, but as you continue to steep in the sensory awareness of everything that's arriving through whether a window's open or whether a window's closed, the changing weather patterns and how that affects the way the soundscape, do the insects, are they going to be active? Will the frogs come in? This is very, very early spring. And so life has not fully awakened. The neo-migrants are not yet passing through. There was a lot of, I think, inescapable anticipation combined with a sense of space. I still didn't really connect Doris Doc Leeper to what made her special as the result of being in such a special place until the day I came downstairs and I said, Perri, the window broke. Yeah, and and she like looks at me like, how can I claim innocence for not breaking the window? There are only two of us in this house, and I was just
I didn't do it.
upstairs. Okay, but I had the experience that the window just broke. Yeah, I was there and I had my hands on the frame, but I did not touch the glass. And the window broke, and that spooked me. Like, why do things happen, and what are the consequences? And what about this thin window? It's not the double pane, the triple pane that we have for both acoustic isolation from the world of noise pollution or the if energy efficiency. That Doris lived in a time prior to air conditioning, right? She slept, no doubt, with her windows open. This really worked on me because it's like, yeah, why aren't the windows open now? What is this place? What might this place tell Perri and myself that it was also telling Doris? Okay. So in that, it became a bit of, I will call it an excavation, okay, where we try to listen past the almost nonstop air traffic during the days, right, from all the flight schools using us, what went from a wilderness area that Doris championed to become a national seashore and was called wilderness then to something under National Park Service management who declassified it and says it's not a wilderness. And now it has high scenic value, but it's not being protected acoustically. And magic things happen at night because we listen even in our sleep. And while we're sleeping, that's why strange sounds wake us up. And while we're sleeping, we aren't listening critically like we do so often during the day. It just works its magic. It just somehow changes us. So that's when I think Perri and I started to listen to night more seriously. Also, we haven't mentioned yet that because of a technicality in housing, we could not sleep in the house.
Mm.
We had to sleep outside. And so, two tents were pitched at opposite sides of the house, sort of thing. And I really enjoyed going to bed and having to sleep outside because, the tent is just such a thin membrane. It doesn't really do anything except make your awareness entirely auditory. Yeah, so a lot of things happened for sure that were unexpected, and you
Yeah.
just go with it. Go with it.
And out of this experience, you collaborated and created Hear Me Out. Do you want to describe a little bit of what this creation is?
Oh, we get to talk about the trembly moments. This
Yes,
is wonderful.
please.
Oh, do
Yes,
we have to?
please.
Do we have to?
I would like
Well,
to.
let's
Bring it,
leave.
Gordon.
Well, let's ramp up to it.
Okay. Yes.
See, just coming from this, by the way, was my third artist residence. I'm new to the arts and activity, but I've always considered myself an artist in my nature sound portraiture that I've done for decades, and always approached it in a very classic landscape photography point of view, classic, where what you see is what you try to accurately as possible document. So we're documenting the beauty of what's real, right? Not the beauty of the dark room, the beauty of technology or anything like this. It's a way of inviting the viewer in photography to see for themselves, right? And so in my recording, I knew that I wanted to do pristine recordings, but that opportunity simply was not going to happen because of the noise pollution that has overwhelmed the area just in the last couple of decades. I'd say, not even a moment without rumble from the train tracks across the water, the bay. Certainly during the day, hardly a moment without aircraft, small, low-flying aircraft doing flight school maneuvers and things like this. So I knew, in the same vein as a couple of other projects I've done, studying Mark Twain and John Muir, that at least what I was going to bring to the collaborative effort is a willingness to do a restoration, to try to take what Perri and I were hearing through the noise and letting it impact us in such a way that we could honestly say these sounds taken now from other places, similar habitats, but decades ago, and also some right there in Florida, what we had and what Doris Leeper, excuse me, what we had and what Doris Leeper experienced in both her night and day there, the audience could be there with her, right, and have their own experience. And so, but Perri, before we get to the shaky nervous part, where I kind of like went off by myself and did something that I was
can't wait to
totally,
hear about this.
that I was totally naive about, and had I known, might not have. But this was my first collaboration, and you had your own What's Happening to Me, because Gordon is like, let me say it, Gordon's off on his own and not doing the kind of collaborative back and forth, right? Would you say that,
Oh, that sounds like a little overstated. I mean, first of all, the trembly bits, you were only incapacitated for a little while. It's not like it went on for days or something,
Yeah, only
and
hours.
only ours. And if the creative process isn't driving us to that point, then oh my gosh, what are we doing?
Mm.
You know, I mean, the full range of emotion, um, I think, I think captured both of us individually as well. And looking back, I feel like that's just the nature of collaboration is that I may get hooked by something in the experience that takes me in one direction. Gordon may get hooked by something that takes him in a different direction. But then the challenge is to then get it out of your head and bring the other person into your process with you. And the beautiful the thing that I think encapsulates our experience as collaborators the most, and I have to say, for me, this was a huge honor, right? I have followed Gordon's work for years and reached out to Gordon for help with my own recording projects. And then to have this experience to collaborate with Gordon was just incredible. So it was a constant, how do we come back together and stay on the same page, go off and do our own thing, but then come back together. And we can talk a little bit about the vocal element that's in this piece, Hear Me Out, as well as the soundscapes that we created. But the title, Hear Me Out, really embodies it for me because Hear Me Out is about hearing outside yourself, outside in the world, and maybe tinged with a little bit of Hear Me Out, Gordon, Hear Me Out, Perri, as well, So if there isn't a little bit, and again, like I went for the edges, right? Edges are places of tension and friction and growth. So if there isn't a little bit of friction in that creative process, again, it begs the question, then what are we doing? How do we grow? So yeah, at times I think we both struggled to collaborate once we got so moved by something that and it became precious. And then you don't want to open it up for inquiry. You just want to keep it precious. But I have to bring it back and share it. Those were the big growth moments for me. But Gordon, you're an incredible collaborator. And I learned so much from the experience of working together.
Thank you. Thank you.
I hard as it was at times.
Well, we both,
I grew a lot from it.
Yeah, we both had the same goal, and that it was to be completely honest with each other and our own thoughts. All right.
I think we actually said that out loud. Like, we're going to be completely honest with each other about this.
And we were. And I don't know what you were doing when I was off in the other room. You might have been taking a nap because of the odd hours of recording. You could have been writing in your journal. You could have still been recovering from COVID. All these sorts of things that were going on. But I had this soundtrack of Doris Leeper in a documentary where she was talking about Atlantic Center for the Arts. She was talking about her life, the opportunity that arts offer, and also the importance of the location on the National Seashore where she lived. And consider this: a single woman. She lived out into her late years, living alone down a road that, if miles down a road that through a sandy, a terrible road that I would question even taking a four-wheel drive down. Okay. And so she liked the isolation and her creativity. So as much as I could find out about Doris Leeper and just be vulnerable to whatever she might have to say, but I thought, gosh, in a documentary, it's already produced. Somebody already has a point to make besides what Doris Leeper's saying. And I do like to get as close to the source as I can. And then it's like, well, then how about going the other way? Not just fragmenting all her words, all her phrases, and putting them in a folder. So I isolated them and had scores of just words and sometimes a short phrase in a folder. And then I randomized them by just simply ordering them by file size and then drag them into an application, which then we got to hear Doris Leeper talk with her tonality, her inflections, all these things which express spirit, but it should not communicate anything.
Mm.
It should not communicate anything. This is not Doris speaking sense. It's only her spirit. And what, if you find meaning in what is being said, that's not her, that's you.
Mm.
Okay? That's you, the echo of you in the space. And when my experience was that it was like the clearest thing that's ever been said to me. Okay. And that totally freaked me out. It was like, this can't be happening. Why is this making any sense at all? But it's like poetry. It's the most important thing I've heard anybody say in, recent memory. So it's like that freaked me out. I thought I was going crazy. And
Yeah.
and I did look like I was crazy, didn't I, Perri? When I came
I
out
think you
and
were.
just walked
I think
away.
you're pretty crazy
And
there
and then
on the
I
couch.
then I started to find ways that I could wiggle out of having to move forward with this art piece, saying I don't have the right to use Doris Leeper's voice. She owns her voice and she has now passed. How can I use her voice? And so then that was a deeper conversation that Perri and I both had. And then Perri said, well, Gordon, let me go listen to it. All right. So she goes off into the other room to listen to it. And I thought, oh, geez, she's going to think she's all alone in the wilderness with a madman. And then, Perri, you heard it.
Yeah. And then I came back, and what I heard was not what I was expecting to hear. Like what Gordon had done was take the narrative of the founding of the Atlantic Center for the Arts and a little bit about Canaveral, but in the spirit of having this be about process and creativity, kind of removed all the proper nouns, if you will, like any reference to a specific person or a particular funding agency or a particular goal, and just had it be the essence of the essence of her drive, if you will, and also the essence of the kismet experience of when you collaborate with others, what amazing things happen, right? So some of the phrases that came out were like, yeah, the funniest thing was about all this is that I always work alone. Like she ended up doing this big collaboration with the community, but characterized herself as a loner, um, in close proximity to lifelong love.
Mm.
Dogs first, and then the Bible, in my mind. Like these are funny non sequiturs that contain so much more when they're looked at in isolation. So there was Gordon writhing on the couch saying, I remember you saying, like, I've done something terrible. I don't know if you said that or if it's just my memory, but I remember you really doing a number on yourself about working with the voice in this way. And then I went into the back little room that was Gordon's little like sunroom studio, and I gave it a listen, and it just brought tears to my eyes because it was so universal in the way that her voice was speaking to the drive that we all have on in big moves in our life, but also in small moves in our life there where I see some potential here. There's beauty to be found. There's something to be saved. We all feel that on some level. And the way that Gordon organized or didn't organize, randomized, I'd say, the voice got to the essence of that. And in honesty in referring to the creative process here, we also had a little bit of a deadline. Like, I believe we needed to present the work that night. So
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
these
yeah,
wonderful,
yeah,
all of these wonderful
yeah.
poetic phrases had come up, and
Mhm.
we were all excited to like work with them. And then it was like, yeah, we have no
And
time. You know,
and so
we're like
Mm.
grad students, like bad grad students at that point, where we're like,
yeah, yeah,
oh
yeah,
no, like we don't
yeah,
have any time
yeah.
to
And
nuance this or put our signature on it, right, Gordon? Is that fair?
right. And
Yeah.
clearly we decided too, after the artist residency was over, that this is just sort of a pilot project for a deeper, more serious work. But it wasn't over just with the voice. We needed then to properly set the voice in the place.
Mm.
And while we do start to hear me out with the nighttime listening experience, very similar to what she heard through her bedroom window and heard for years and years. And then we break into day. Then we, in the bird songs just being so what they are in the Southeast, the song most songful of any, at least as songful as any place in the world. And then we set it on the windblown beach with the recordings of the microphones actually laying down on the sand with the view towards the sky and that muffled sense of dune effect with the
Mm.
crashing surf go. And then Doris Leeper's voice, as if somebody's like, oh, some distance away, just sort of talking. When you're on the beach with other people and their voice comes in and out, and you just catch little fragments. So I tried to set it that way so that you could choose either just to hear it as babble, if that's somebody else's present, or you could choose to more consciously explore it and pay attention and just get the same impression from the spoken word as
Mm.
you might just from the sensation of the sun on your skin and the sea breeze moving across your surface, and just the whole ocean experience that many of us love.
My experience, Gordon and Perri, as I was listening, I was so caught off guard because I have worked with both of you and listened to many of your recordings. And my expectation was I'm going to hear nature, which is what you hear for the first couple minutes, is just there's no man-made sound in there. And that's what I'm listening to and expecting. And I'm hearing these waves. And then I was like, did I just hear a voice? No, I didn't. That somebody was talking in the other room. And no, I think, yeah, no, I'm hearing a voice. So then I'm starting to pay attention to this, and the experience that I had, I'm sure all of us will have different experiences listening to this, but the experience I had was it suddenly brought me into this sense of being woven into the soundscape as opposed to being separate from. Because to me, it sounds like her words are in the waves, right? That's how it was perceived to me. And it instantly
Beautiful.
brought me into this emotional experience of feeling my words too are woven into waves and wind and birdsong. And it just connected me in a different way. It was very powerful. And I think, Perri, I was talking to you at the time I was listening to it, and I was, I'd had such an emotional experience with it. I think it's a profound invitation for us as we listen to it.
Oh, thank you. I like the way you describe that as the weaving into.
Mm.
And I think we're all faced with that. My high school mentor uh, once told me, "Don't speak until you can improve on the silence."
Mhm.
Right?
Love that.
And uh, and it's surprising how many people go into nature as just a different setting to keep chattering away, right?
Oh, yes.
I think, um, mm, and President Johnson, he also had a sign on his desk that said, "When you're talking, you aren't learning anything." And of course, it faced towards the chair in front of his desk.
That's a good reminder for all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love your interpretation, Meryl. That's really wonderful to hear because this piece, I don't think, has had very many listeners yet.
Mm.
Gordon and I have talked about, well, what happens now with it? Does it, you know, be a joy to install it somewhere, or but what happens now? And maybe the right thing to do right now is just sit with it a little bit. But it hasn't had many listeners, so it's wonderful to hear your impressions.
Mm.
And it really makes me think about the how I, you know, and this is a wonderful gift of collaboration too, is that I'd realized before we made this piece together that I was operating with some pretty serious rules about my recordings and how to use them and what they were for and what my field recordings would sound like. And I was being pretty dogmatic about, you know, well, if the piece is about whales, then it's going to sound like whales. And if the piece is about, you know, the Arctic, it's going to sound like the Arctic. Like I was very one to one in the way that I was investigating place through sound. And this piece, Hear Me Out, I feel like gave me real permission through collaboration or even on my own to start to weave it together. Like it's not inside or outside. It's not people or place. It's not this or that. It's like all happening all the time, to your point, right? Our voice is being woven through place. Our voice is being woven through other people's experience. Right now, I'm sitting in this library. You know, people around can hear me. I'm sure they're wondering what in the world we're talking about, but they hear me. Um, but so it was a permission giving thing for me as an artist where I felt like I need no permission. I'm pretty out there. I'm pretty willing to experiment with anything. I'm pretty bold. And it turned out, no, I was working within a box, and this freed me from that as well.
Yeah, the mission of the Atlantic Center for the Arts is to be able to allow artists to collaborate that otherwise might not even have conversations. Okay, and where is that going to lead? And I think where this definitely led Perri and myself is to inquire further about the relationship of people to places and how, of course, we do a lot of talking all the time about how much we change the environment. People change places. But what is the importance of places changing us, right? And so, might we be able to find 10 or so uh, indisputable, brilliant minds throughout history that stand out as exceptional human beings and somehow study their childhood and upbringing and where they studied, where they played, and tie it into the importance of place and especially nature? So we're not, when we talk about the destruction of wilderness places by downgrading them to be just scenic only, or the destruction of wilderness places and the loss of habitat for wildlife, is it also possibly the loss of the flourishing of future geniuses, right? Fundamentally, we are inseparable from the land.
Right.
And in the arts, more than any place else, perhaps, it becomes so clear it really stares us in the face, especially when we go to places that have been so important to artists like Doris Leeper.
So I'm going to let listeners hear this beautiful piece at the end of our conversation so that they can sit with it.
Mm.
And I'm curious if you have further collaboration plans, if you're working on individual projects that you would like to just share, if there are things you're reflecting on after this this creative process, what's next or what's current?
Well,
Gordon.
Perri, yeah. I mean, the next is to find time that we can actually continue the conversations that were already started there. And there are a couple of projects which is too early to mention. Among them, though, is to actually taking that relatively short period of time we spent together at Canaveral National Seashore and go even deeper. And then, in the creation of any art, it takes time. You can't be rushed. And so there's more work to be done there, certainly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm here in Montague, Massachusetts, on my way up to Putney, Vermont, to give a presentation called Svalbard Speaks from my work in the Arctic. And that was almost 2 years ago now. But I'll be sharing sounds and stories from that experience. But I am increasingly aware of the important role that people played in that experience of place for me as well. So there are ideas that opened up in Florida that I feel like are weaving through future work, but also past work and informing things in interesting ways. Yeah. And then my big project, which I really hope Gordon will continue to brainstorm with me on, is at the New Bedford Whaling Museum in 2025. It'll be an exhibition about quiet water and the importance of preserving quiet in oceans on the migratory routes of whales and for the health of all marine creatures and all creatures. But that work will go deep into protecting quiet below the surface.
I love the work you guys are doing, and I'm so glad to get to be in conversation with y'all today. Thank you so
Oh,
much
thanks,
for
Meryl.
sharing a little bit of the backstory of
Yeah.
this incredible piece. I'm so grateful for both of you.
Oh, you're welcome. It's wonderful to spend time with you, as always.
Yeah, such a pleasure to see you, Meryl. And thank you so much for the opportunity to reinvestigate, to unpack this experience just a little bit more. Such a pleasure that wouldn't happen without us getting together. So thank you.
I'm so glad.
Yeah.
balance, I guess, the way you normally do things. It's all going to be a plus. While I was there, I'm basically self-taught. All that to say that. The rest varies. It's amazing to believe we're also talking about it made all the difference in the world. We were asked that question, maybe if there was little ability, there was, one of the things that extraordinary opportunity. I kept thinking about this. It's remarkably like I envisioned. I would have killed for an opportunity like that, but I think it's important to know I'm happy to say what I was playing in my own whatever they want to do that period of time. One of the funny things about this whole deal is I was never thinking into sharing with other artists. People have asked me that repeatedly. Well, of all the people who had this idea, because you've always worked alone, places, writer, dance, time to be always a lot mecca. Place, no way. Dogs, and then Bible, in my mind, in the music, supported the environment. I was there. It happened. Sculptures work together. Indeed, hear me out. The art, it was enough indivisible design, leap of faith. And I thought, and that's the part that seemed to be the idea I suddenly thought, an idea, not possible, was a possibility. Lifelong love is taken.
Thanks for listening to Our Mindful Nature. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider sharing it with a friend or leaving me a review wherever you get your podcasts. It helps others to find the show, and let's face it, we could all use a few more meditators in our lives. Our Mindful Nature is recorded on Muskogee land and produced with the support of Brianna Nielsen. Deep gratitude is offered to acoustic ecologists Gordon Hempton and Nick McMahon for the use of their nature field recordings in many of these episodes. To join my live classes, ask questions, or learn about my teacher trainings, please visit merylarnett.com. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next week.